now reconvene our July 19th, 2022 2 p.m. meeting to order at 3:03 p.m. And there being no further business, we will adjourn the July 19th, 2022 2 p.m. meeting at 3:04 p.m. And next we will call the meeting of the Waco City Council on July 19th, 2022 to order at 3:04 p.m. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And I would also like to remind everyone here today that we will be having a reception for Judge Chris Taylor on his retirement at 5 p.m. Here in this building, and we'll have an opportunity at that moment to congratulate him for his incredible service to our community, and look forward to having the opportunity for our council to celebrate him then. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on any agenda item or during the hearing of visitors portion of the agenda. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation, regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. If you are here to speak and have not filled out a registration card, please see the City Secretary staff at the registration table outside of the auditorium to provide registration information so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation, and staff will distribute those to council. If you are unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is able to be brought to you. Is anyone present who would like to speak on a work session item? If not, then we will recess the regular session and reconvene and convene a work session with a report from our city manager.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. Welcome to this afternoon's session. Wanted to start with a couple changes in the Council agenda today. First, I am postponing discussion on work session 448. That is the property development program that was going to be discussed. I'm going to postpone that for about a month, and we'll be back in front of you on this critical topic. And the second change on the agenda today, I have just in the last few minutes received a request for a continuance on public hearing 455. That's the one related to Unbound. The request specifically calls for a continuance till August the 2nd, the council meeting on August the 2nd. So tonight, of course, you'll have a couple of choices in that request. You can choose to continue it as requested, or you could choose to act on it as it's posted today. From organizational update, I have one, and I want you to think back to the year 2012. It was a good year in Waco. Baylor University had just announced McLean Stadium as a project, and the council supported it with a large TIF award. The Lady Bears had gone 40-0 and won the national championship. The animal shelter, the council then had just taken it over from the Humane Society and to put it on the path towards a no-kill status. But arguably the best thing that happened in 2012 is that the council hired Jennifer Ritchie as its city attorney. Woo! Jennifer's coming up on her 10-year anniversary in a couple weeks, and you know, I think it's worthy of a moment where we can celebrate her great work and her influence on our organization, influence on me as your manager, and just celebrate that and acknowledge, because not very many of your direct appointeds make it to 10 years. I think in that time she served with 4 managers, and they keep getting crazier as they go down the, you know, so sorry about that. But yeah, so just wanted to take a moment and provide her her service award and acknowledge her great work, and give y'all a moment to say thanks as well.
Jennifer, we are so blessed to have you serving as our city attorney. One of you put your heart and soul into this work. It is so I've been able to practice law myself in private practice. And been a part. I see you own the work that you do as though you have ownership in the city of Waco. That's how much of your heart and soul is in this work, and you do it in a dignified, classy, kind, compassionate way. But you're also a fierce advocate for our city. I think one of the other things that is so meaningful to me is that with you as our city attorney, I know the right call is going to be made. I feel safe with you at the helm in this office. But what's also fun is seeing you in the community, and not only the esteemed respect you have from our local bar, and how much they look up to you and respect you, but just members of the community, different nonprofits that you've worked with, or whomever it might be, just this great respect. I think it's hard to herd cats like our council when you're in a direct appointment. And that's true for any of the three of you in this room. I think that you are able to be honest when sometimes it's hard, but that's the most important thing for us, and that's really important. I think you're also, you care about not only the city, but people. You care about us, just really thankful for all that you are and all that you do for our city. And Waco is, bar none, a better city because of your work in this town. So thank you so much. And I would hope some other council members would jump in here right now too.
I'll jump in here first. Thanks. 10 years is fantastic. In my previous life as an investment banker, chief operating officer, I always worked very closely with general counsel, chief counsel, and that was really the team. So I see you do a great job, as good or better than any general counsel I've ever worked with. You identify risks for us, you offer options, and to me that's the ultimate, the highest bar that you can clear, and I appreciate that. This council has also been very ambitious, and we've got a lot of projects, growth projects, economic development projects that maybe weren't part of the general counsel or the city council, the city attorney job in previous administrations. So I appreciate you stepping up and serving the city well. Thanks, Jennifer.
Yeah, Jennifer, I'll gladly echo both of those comments. And I think in addition to your outstanding work as our council here, as the council to the city council, what you've done in the community and in the bar has been really amazing. I know that you've been involved with the symphony and active in your church, but I've especially appreciated your leadership and participation in so many aspects of the Bar Association, as charitable work, and your commitment to professionalism, integrity, and ethics in our profession. And so grateful for your service to our local bar, but also the community at large, in addition to your wonderful work for the city over the last decade.
Jennifer, I wish I had a glass of champagne to properly toast you, so I'll raise my Dasani water bottle to you. But cheers to 10 years of faithful leadership. And to echo the sentiments of my council members, I'm grateful for just the whole rich life that you live and the way that you're engaged in the city, the way that you volunteer, the way that you go kayak with Fiona, the way that you are exploring national parks, that richness you bring to your work, and you bring your whole self to work in a way that I think makes a big difference for us and for your team. And you are a female leader that I really admire and look up to and trust, and think that it's so important for boys and girls and non-binary kids to see women leading in really powerful ways that are really thoughtful and embodied, and you do that. So thank you for 10 years, and we hope that we have maybe 100 more with you.
Right. At least.
That's fair.
I echo what my colleagues are saying. Also, Jennifer, I think you and I have a special place that's totally different here on the council. What I went through with Joe, you were there. And I don't think anybody here in the council could say that. Excuse me, I don't mean to be this way. I don't mean to get emotional, but I don't know if I ever really officially thanked you publicly, but you were there for me. And that's special to me because it was a rough period of my life, but you were there as part of the City of Waco staff. You were there representing them and also helped me through a rough spot in my life. And I just want to thank you for your leadership. You've always taken care of us. Sometimes I don't like what you tell me, but I know you're telling me to be on the right way and to make sure that we're safe legally. So I appreciate all that. Like I said, I'm a little different from the rest of the council in what you and I you helped me go through. But I appreciate your leadership, and I appreciate that you try and do keep us safe as legally. So thank you, Jennifer. I really hope you spend a lot more time here in Waco. We really appreciate you.
Jennifer, the sentiments of my colleagues are echoed in what I think and what I know, and knowing that the difficulties that come with protecting us, and things that we may not even know. And, but it's your job and responsibility. And I think that you do it in such a way that no one feels, even when you lean in, because we're doing what we're not supposed to do. That's my favorite Jennifer lean. She leans really quickly to the microphone to stop us from saying something that we shouldn't. But the thing that was most important to me, I witnessed with my own eyes. We were at TML in Houston, Texas Municipal League, and I was doing something. And I saw Jennifer with a boatload of young attorneys. And I was like, okay, what's happening here? And they were like, oh my God, Jennifer. And they proceeded to tell me how amazing Jennifer was, what a good lawyer she was, what an excellent mentor she was, how important that her role was with the attorneys in the risk pool and all of those things. And I mean, yeah, we know what we know about you, but it's something else when the world shares what they know is true and it lines up with what you know. So what that means to us is that we have a jewel in you as a city attorney. We appreciate your working with us regardless of the lean-ins and all the times that, council member, that's me, to no one else, just me. But so grateful for you, so grateful for the impact that you have on our city, so grateful for the impact that you have in our lives, professionally and personally. And so, as Councilmember Palmer said, we lift our topos to you.
10 more years.
Mayor, if I could real quickly, and I don't want to take up too much time, I want to say, obviously, thank you all so much for the very kind words. Thank you, Bradley, for pulling one over on me. I usually know what's happening in the agenda, and I didn't know this. But
got past you, huh?
Obviously, this is a team effort in every way, and I couldn't do any of this without the team in the legal department, without the city manager team, without working for this great team, which is the city council, and all the directors and staff. And so it's a great place to work. It's a great city to live in, and I really do appreciate y'all and working for y'all. And so thank you very much for your kind words.
All right. Well, that was fun. Let's talk about water for a second, though. In the last couple weeks, been a lot of attention around the water restrictions that I called for moving to stage 2, and so I thought I might take a moment and discuss those for a minute and provide some context, much of which the council is familiar with, but perhaps those in the audience aren't. And so, as you're at your dinner parties and talking about stats and numbers, 'cause I know y'all want to. This is additional context you can use, but some of the questions I've seen out in the world is, well, why are we moving to stage 2 at this point? And so I wanted to walk through that. First, what you're seeing on the slide here today, or up here, is the January to June precipitation numbers, and we are in a really abnormal drought. If you look across the last 57 years, we're at the 4th driest period of time for January to June, a time in which Waco traditionally gets quite a bit of precipitation. We're about a 10 inches behind in that regard, and I was on the news the other day, and they asked, what's it going to take to get us out of the drought? It's 15 inches is what the Climate Prediction Center indicates would be the number, is what we need right now to get us out of drought conditions. So it's a historically significant drought in that regard. Next slide, Ashley. The other thing, our water team and our assistant city manager Kane and others have been kind of crunching math, and I think it's really interesting to note in June where we lost water to. Our consumers, our citizens and residents and businesses in Waco used about 900 million gallons of water. But we actually evaporated 2 gallons of water for every gallon of water we used. And so the heat and the dry summer and our usage caused for the lake to get drawn down by about 2.7 billion gallons. And the inflow into the lake from the 3 tributaries, though, for the whole month of June was only 1.4 million gallons. So our deficit in June was quite stark and dramatic. And the July number will actually be worse than that. And so we moved to stage 2 in recognition that we're in the summer in a unique drought situation. And so what does stage 2 mean? Of course, y'all probably seen it. We, as a city, are reducing our own water usage by at least 30% at our city facilities. And additionally, businesses and residents are being asked or told to reduce their watering to 2 days a week, outdoor watering to 2 days a week and within certain time periods. That's the stage we're currently in. It's called a moderate water shortage. The goal in a moderate water shortage is to essentially buy us time so that hopefully it will rain and we won't have to move further into stage 3 and 4, which are more severe situations. We're currently at 454 at the lake level, 454.8 or 9. So we've got a little time until we move to stage 3. If it doesn't rain and we remain in a drought status and it remains hot, we estimate we'll be in stage 3 by the end of October of this year, which would mean the lake level would be at about 449 or about half full or half empty, depends on if you're a glass half full person or a glass half empty person. At stage 3, there's additional restrictions that will go into place. Of course, we'll continue to restrict our own water usage. Outdoor watering will go to 1 day a week. We'll start restricting permitting of pools. We won't be able to wash buildings and sidewalks and parking areas and a number of other restrictions as well. And of course, stage 4, the final stage in our drought contingency plan, if we remain in a drought condition and we don't get big October, November rains or February or March rains, we're looking at being at stage 4 emergency water shortage by the spring of 2023. And you note there are some additional restrictions that would come into play at that point in time. Again, we're in moderate water shortage. We're asking for the public's help to reduce their consumption. I would argue if you're putting a whole lot of water on your St. Augustine, you're fighting a losing battle. With the temperatures as they are, it's probably going to die anyway. So why don't you let it die a little earlier this year so that we have water when it comes to February and March. I think that was my last slide. Is that right, Ashley? On our agenda today, we do have 2 informal reports. One related to the movement of the LaSalle Circle Shuttle from a free route to a fixed route with fare. There is a public engagement process that we outlined in that informal report as well. That's a requirement anytime we're moving and making changes on our transit system. And then the second informal report is an update on the development at Sanger School between the city and grassroots development.
City Manager Ford, I'm really excited to see this informal report come before council with an update. This is a project that I and several District 4 residents are eagerly looking forward to. I drive by it several times a week and have my imagination goggles on and just think of how great this can be. And once families are running around and seeing this space that's long been abandoned revitalized and really add an asset to such a rich history in Sanger Heights. So I'm thrilled to see we've got momentum here and eager to see these processes come in alignment as we do the utility and infrastructure work and the build out of this development. So thanks for the update.
Thanks, Councilmember. I'm excited as well. I think it's been a neat pocket neighborhood in the core of the city.
And adding some good affordable housing.
And some affordability to it. That's right.
I also am so excited about this. This has been a long time coming. We expect this to be voted on in September.
That is our expectation.
Okay.
And we remain ready to do that.
Okay.
Of course, we have other parties that we need their support, both on the engineering side, not our own staff, but third-party engineers that are supporting grassroots certainly need their assistance in moving the ball forward.
Okay. Is there any reason why this could get delayed from September, based on your understanding right now?
Not from our end.
Okay.
But certainly if there's something on the private side or the third-party engineering side could cause for delays.
If you feel like if you learn of something that's causing delays, please bring that to our attention. This is something that like Councilmember Palmer, just so excited about, but definitely given the need and the amount of time that we've been working on this, are really excited for it to move forward. So really thankful for all parties who are involved and all parties that are doing work, and excited for the future of this one.
We will do that, and this was the very first article that the Waco Trib ever called me on 5 years ago, so I'm excited. That tells you something, doesn't it? Yep, that tells you something. So we do have 15 public hearings on the agenda today. In fact, there were so many public hearings on the agenda today. Clint Peters, our Director of Development Services, saw it coming and he went on vacation. So the good news, though, is that we've got an excellent backup here today, and that's our Planning Manager, Beatrice Wharton. She'll be covering 14 of the public hearings here in a few minutes in the work session. And then we also have a public hearing 467 on the agenda to receive comments on the 2023 action plan under the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Highlights from the agenda. I'm going to be brief here because I know we're running a couple minutes behind. I'm going to just cover two resolutions today. The first one's Resolution 483, which would allow for the acquisition of 85.9 acres on 12th Street for a purchase price of $2.25 million with an additional $20,000 for closing fees, appraisal, surveying, or other expenses related to the purchase. The tract that you're seeing on the screen here outlined in red is the 85.9 acres at South 12th Street, just north of Loop 340. The city's intentions are to purchase this property in furtherance of our strategic housing plan, in the hopes we can create a mixed income neighborhood on this property. And I think we have another graphic that shows some of the strategy behind it as well. Everything in blue the city also owns already, so across 12th Street as well as to the north of this property. And so there's a lot of opportunity for this tract to be a really vibrant neighborhood that's connected with open space and parkland, and really sets a really nice tone for development in the core of Waco.
I'm glad to see this on this agenda, City Manager Ford, namely because it'll not only add a resurgence of energy to the already revitalization processes in South Waco and reestablishing the businesses and community, but it also would add several hundred homes in Waco ISD. And I think that's one of those things that we miss sometime as we look at where development goes and how we enhance and improve our society. Is this would allow another offering within our localized, our larger localized district, and I'm really excited about seeing this. We know we have a housing problem. We also know land is one of those things they're not creating any more of. So when we have an opportunity with a concentrated effort to do many of the goals that we have, and to do it in a manner that would serve the bulkhead of our community, which are those who need opportunities for housing that is affordable, I think that we should take it. And so I'm glad to see us doing that.
Thanks, Council. We do anticipate going out for RFP, request for proposals, later in 2022 on that property to solicit developers.
I'll just echo Councilmember Bearfield. I think it's a generational opportunity to have this quantity of acreage and to create the density that we'll be able to create. And with that level of density and that quantity of acreage really has a greater wake and creates bigger and better momentum for not only that part of town, but the community as a whole. So I think it really is a strategic purchase on our behalf, given the acreage that we own immediately next door as the city. And think it's really going to be something that will be a win. And one of the wins I want to point out on this, I believe, is that it's going to be a win to the taxpayer, because this is going to solidify quality development in the core of the community, and that is going to produce tax revenue for years and years to come. And so it's not only strategic to accomplish so many of our affordable housing goals and broader housing goals, but it also is a wise and prudent investment when we're looking at the return that we're anticipating for our tax base. And for that, I really appreciate city management's strategic work and city legal working this contract.
The last resolution I wanted, oh, my apologies.
I was just gonna say, there's so much going on in South Waco right now. I'm excited about, this is the most movement I've ever seen in South Waco, including the River Walk and the new basketball arena. So there's so much going on in South Waco right now, and I'm thrilled about it with mixed emotions. I was looking at some of this land for Little League play, you know, because our Southern Little League is about to lose their place. So I was looking at that, but I did not know that this development was looking at this to put homes in. So I'm thinking my kids, my taxpayers, and all this. So, but I'm glad to see all this development in South Waco. But I just wanted to make sure that my people at Southern would know that I did not know when I offered that piece of property to them to go to when WISD, you know, uses the property that they're on now, because that is WISD property that Southern is on. The only other place I knew in South Waco was theirs. So now I'm going to have to look for something else for them and help our kids.
Well, maybe what we can
we
partner
just-
together
yeah.
and have a future agenda item even on how we can ensure that there's quality park space and Little League space throughout the entirety of our city for these great programs that we love.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm already getting messages from staff, so
Okay.
point taken, and we'll get our thinking caps on. The second resolution I wanted to highlight is Resolution 487, which allows for the purchase of 34 police interceptor utility hybrid vehicles from Silsbee Ford for an amount not to exceed $2.225965, $2.2 million or so. Sorry about that. Math bumble there. This purchase, 34 hybrid vehicles, is in alignment with the preliminary findings of the fleet replacement study. And wanted just to highlight that I think it's great work and will certainly reduce our carbon emissions from the police fleet by 750,000 pounds, or 383 tons of CO2 that will not be putting out in the air when you compare the hybrids that we're buying versus the conventional gas-powered vehicles that they're in right now. We did provide you a breakdown of the uses of these vehicles in the item. You'll see that some of these are going to patrol and frontline officers, and some are going to detectives or CID, but every single vehicle being purchased does require frontline capabilities. After the delivery of these vehicles, the police department alone will be at 74 hybrids, and I think that's a good sign of our incremental progress to moving in the right direction on our fleet.
City Manager, and I'm going to apologize because I've been traveling and hadn't had an opportunity for my review with you. The time frame for at least one completely electric vehicle MPD is when?
Well, we had a great opportunity.
We did.
And now that's been transitioned to development services. And
Because
we're
we bought
currently
the Ford Mach.
the Mach-E, and now we're attempting to acquire a Mach-E GT,
Okay.
which is the one that our third-party outfitter indicates is required to run all the
Yeah, the
electric lights
yes,
and
yes.
systems. So we're waiting for that opportunity. Certainly, the fleet team and PD have been given the green light to acquire that vehicle.
So as soon as one is available, then?
Yeah, it's going to be an availability issue. That's correct.
Okay.
So we'll be glad to report on that as soon as we're able to acquire. We've got the green light to go do it, and of course that'll be a pilot vehicle
Yeah,
for us
sure.
to see how it
Sure.
works and do we like it
Sure.
for our purposes, and we'll go from there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilmember. On ordinances today, we do have 4 on the agenda. Ordinance 492 is a first reading that provides for changes to the membership of the Building Standards Committee. Our legal team's done a great job of working through those changes and is available for questions if you have them. And the remaining 3 ordinances are on for second reading.
Bradley Holmes here.
Oh, sorry, and third reading, yes. What are you doing? Throwing me off.
I had
A hard enough time on my own. Holmes, yes, sir.
Yeah, I have just one comment on the resolutions, 484, just a voice of support on this. This is like a $2 million plus highway safety improvement program, and we're getting a grant from TxDOT for 1.7 million. We match just under $500,000 of that, and I think this is catching 3 really important intersections in our city that right now don't have the optimal traffic signals. And one of them is the Valley Mills and Bishop intersection in my District 5, which doesn't have a signal at all, and it really needs one. And I just like that we're moving forward with this one and taking advantage of a TxDOT grant to help leverage our taxpayer funds. These traffic intersection signals, I know that we have conversation about them every once in a while in the community, and they're not cheap. I mean, these, you can see right here, they run $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 an intersection. So for us to get the grant from at a state level, I think is really beneficial. And again, great job leveraging our funds to cover 3 very important intersections. Thanks.
Thanks, Councilmember.
All right, the consent agenda includes resolutions 2022-468 through 491. Are there any items council would like to remove from the consent agenda? If not, that will stand as read. And the next item on the agenda are the work session items 2022-445 through 449. Would you please call the first work session, Bradley?
We've got Nick Sarpy is going to join us for just a couple of minutes at the table to discuss our FY 22-23 operating and CIP budget development. Nick, of course, serves as our Director of Finance or Chief Financial Officer and has been the chief architect of the budget so far. And I'll turn it over to Nick.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. So as Bradley said, my presentation is pretty brief. Just continuing our process of giving you an opportunity to have discussion about the development of the 22-23 budget. So if there are any questions, please feel free to let me know. Otherwise, I'll jump right into the budget calendar. So on the 25th, so Monday, we should have the certified tax rolls from CAD. And then next week, we'll have a budget audit committee meeting right after boards and commissions to talk about the budget requests and give you a preliminary glimpse into the submitted budget that we'll submit on the 29th. And then on the 2nd, we will turn everything over to you. So we'll present the filed budget, the tax rolls, and then we'll start going through the process of setting the public hearing for the vote on the budget, which will be set for August 30th. We'll begin the process of doing the readings for the municipal drainage utility ordinance changes on the 16th of August, and the ordinance setting the departments on the 16th. We'll also have the resolution setting the date for the public hearing and vote on the tax rate. So August 30th is the big day. So that would be the second reading of the municipal drainage utility ordinance, as well as the public hearing and vote on the resolution for the municipal drainage utility fee schedule revisions, which align with the ordinance changes. We'll have the public hearing on the proposed budget, as well as the adoption of the budget. And then we'll have the second read on the ordinance setting departments, and then we'll also have a resolution for the financial management policy updates that previously went over with you guys. And then on September 6th is the public hearing and the first and final reading of the tax rate ordinance.
Any questions for Nick?
That hearing on the 30th is going to be 3 o'clock here in the Bosque Theater, is that right?
I think we have it planned for the normal 6 o'clock time for public hearings.
Oh, okay.
I think on the calendar they have it scheduled for 3 like we would a normal work session, but traditionally we've done it at the normal council meeting times.
Okay.
That might be, I'm assuming the goal behind that is allowing people who might be getting off work to be able to come and speak into the process and the budget. Is that right?
Exactly.
Thanks so much. I need to update my calendar.
Any other questions for Nick? Thank you, Nick.
All right, Mayor and Council, our next work session is work session 446. It's a public art update related to progress being made at the Waco Regional Airport Terminal. We have three very creative individuals joining us. Joel, I'm lumping you in there. Joel Martinez, our Director of Aviation, as well as Fiona Bond and Amanda Dyer from Creative Waco. I'm excited for Joel and the team to show you the progress that's been made on the selection of art pieces at the airport. Joel has I think some show and tell that he's gonna pull out here in a little while to kind of let you touch and feel some of the pieces, or at least some of the things that they'll be made out of. And I just want to thank Creative Waco for their ongoing work to stand beside us and create what's going to be just a really excellent improvement at the airport. So, Joel, why don't you take us away?
All right. Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Joel Martinez, Director of Aviation, City of Waco. I have Amanda Dyer with Creative Waco and Fiona Bond with Creative Waco as well. We have been working pretty extensively with a couple of groups and committees to bring forth these recommendations today that we have a schedule and a timeline that we'll show you here at the end as well. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Amanda that's going to describe this wonderful project that we're working on.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Dyer, Director of Public Art and Development at Creative Waco, and I'm very pleased to present to you today two artworks that are recommended for installation in the Waco Regional Airport. I'm going to give you some project background up to this point, including the overall project goals and the artwork criteria, and then the selection process that we used. Then I'll provide some information on the recommended artworks, and finally, I'll review the project timeline going forward. So as a quick overview of how this project has developed, Creative Waco was invited to administer the commissioning process for artworks to be installed in the airport. And today, 2 of the 4 projects are ready for approval by City Council, followed by execution and installation. The project goals for the artwork installation or creation was to have quality public art with a wow factor that city, stakeholders, and community can be proud of, and then continuing to build a robust process for commissioning public art and informing a public art strategic plan. Also, we're looking for new high-quality public art that complements the airport renovation project, that grows Waco's reputation and brand as a community that values and supports creativity and the arts. Also, design elements that highlight Waco's distinct culture, community, beauty, and attractions. Creates a gateway to Waco that is impressive, distinctive, and welcoming, and then also engaging local and regional artists when we can. So the criteria that we developed for these artworks were size, weight, and installation requirements from the architect. And then also we wanted to consider safety, durability, and maintenance. So we received almost 90 proposals for these 2 projects. Submissions were received from across the United States, along with several international submissions. Our community should be very proud of the interest shown by artists who want to work in Waco. We were truly impressed by the strength and variety of the proposals. The selection of the final recommendations was not easy. The process began with the formation of a technical panel and an artistic panel made up of the Director of Public Works, Director of Waco Regional Airport, Assistant City Manager, Creative Waco staff, CAECO Architecture staff, representatives from the Aviation Advisory Board and the Convention and Visitors Bureau Commission, a local artist, and a Dallas Love Field Arts Administrator to give an external point of view. All eligible and complete applications were scored by both the technical panel and the artistic panel. Scores were used to rank the proposals, followed by panel group discussions. There were seven finalists chosen, 3 for one artwork and 4 for the other. Finalists each gave a Zoom presentation and were interviewed by a selection panel made up of members of the technical and artistic panel. After final discussions, one recommendation was made by consensus for each of the 2 artworks. So the first artwork that I am going to discuss is the recommended artwork for the main concourse. And you can see there on the right side, the proposed location for the artwork is highlighted in blue. It is also circled in blue in the schematic at the bottom, excuse me, at the bottom of the slide. So the goals and specs for this particular piece was that we were looking for a ceiling-mounted sculpture featuring the changing natural light with the possible incorporation of glass or a lighting element. We wanted to create that instant wow factor in the airport's largest and tallest space. The budget for this piece was $90,000, and the area that could be covered is 60 feet by 34 feet. So it's that ceiling section highlighted in blue. So the piece that is being recommended is called Flight Patterns, and it is by a local artist, Bryant Stanton. You can see here on the left a rendering of the piece installed in the location. And then you'll see on the right some of the inspiration for the piece, which is the flight patterns of birds and also radar imagery. So those are some of the things that he incorporated into the piece. And I will show you a detail on the next slide. This detail you can see shows the elements that would be used for incorporation into the piece, including the birds that are situated in the installation, and we have some mock-ups of those birds here. They would be created in aluminum, and then there would be sort of the contrails or the flight patterns that are also created in aluminum, and then a dichroic glass that would be incorporated. And you can see Fiona's holding up some of that dichroic glass here. It is a glass that has a shimmer, sort of a incorporated into it. And so it is transparent or translucent, and you can see that light can pass through and can create shadows or light, all that can be thrown throughout the room depending on where the light's coming in throughout the day. So the piece is by Bryant Stanton, who is the owner artist at Waco Stanton Studios, and he has been here in Waco since 1979. He will be working with Waco-based metal artist Morgan Eyring of Nickel Metal Smiths, and the materials, as I mentioned, are included will be aluminum, reflective dichroic glass will be incorporated as well. And this piece interprets several travel-related themes, including the flight patterns of the scissor-tailed flycatchers, radar patterns, as I mentioned previously, and then the history of Blackland Army Airfield and the World War II Waco CG-4 gliders are kind of all incorporated into this piece. Another element that the artist is hoping to incorporate is an interpretation of the Women Air Force Service pilots, or WASP pilots, that were instrumental during World War II at Blackland Army Airfield. What he's hoping to be able to do is to either etch their names or cut their names into those metal contrails that you can see, and hopefully you'll be able to either read them over your head or maybe even see those words reflected throughout the room somewhere, either on the floor or depending on where the light is. Now that is an aspirational element that they need to prototype and see if it will work, but that's something that they're interested in trying to incorporate. There were 39 proposals submitted for this particular call. This piece was in every scorer's top 3 recommendations, both the technical and the artistic panel. And after Mr. Stanton and Ms. Eyring's formal presentation and interview, this artwork was chosen as the #1 recommendation by consensus of the selection panel. The panelists were very impressed by how Mr. Stanton incorporated so many distinct elements of Waco's natural and cultural history into the artwork. The next piece that's being recommended today is for the departure lounge. And you can see here on the right side of this slide, the section highlighted in blue. That's where this piece will be located, and it's also indicated there on the bottom of the slide in the schematic. The goals and specs for this particular piece were to depict a life-size mammoth in a wall relief. So that could be, we were envisioning something like a bas relief where it would be a three-dimensional sculpture, but that could be done in, any sort of material. It would be showcasing Waco Mammoth National Monument in the Waco Mammoth site. And then the budget is $75,000, and the dimensions that were allocated are 25 feet 3 inches wide, 16 feet 4 inches high. So the recommended artwork is depicted here in 3 different treatments. It is untitled. The artist hasn't decided on a title yet. Her name is Mansa Allen, and these are 3 examples of potential treatments provided by the artist. The color of the wall and the color of the fiber that is shown would be, in the material of the fiber will be made, the selection will be made at a later date by the artist in consultation with the architects, the airport staff, and Creative Waco. So these are just 3 potential treatments. We wanted you to see.
I don't want to impose any meaning the artist may not have intended, but those look to be Colombian mammoths. Is that fair to say?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right.
These are examples of the artist's work in other sites. We wanted you to see kind of how she works, since it is such a unique artwork. And so you'll see on the left, that's a piece that's attached to a wall, similar to what we would be having at the airport. And then the one in the middle and then the one on the right are sort of used as barriers or partitions. And they are very strong, heavy artworks. The fiber is coated in a resin so that it makes it very strong and sturdy and durable. She's even created artworks that people can climb through. So this is, I think, going to be a very durable piece that can be throughout for many years in the airport.
Is that?
Yes.
Yes. So we have some of the options for potential for some of the fibers, or those are some examples that she has used before. We also have some here that you could handle if you'd like to, that are just ideas of what she might be using. It kind of shows you the different colors that are available and also the different fibers that you can see that the texture that can be achieved with the artwork. So Mansa Allen is a New York-based artist, who is based in she's based in New York, but was born in Slovenia. And she creates large-scale works using fiber, such as hemp wire or cotton. And this is a lace treatment. So it's bobbin lace. I don't know if you've ever seen bobbin lace. So it's, the fibers are on some sort of a spool, and you sort of weave them around and braid them, but she does this on such a large scale with giant, really thick fibers and also really big finished pieces. And this particular piece with the Colombian mammoth incorporates many elements of Waco's story, including the mammoth, lace making of early European immigrant settlers, and the area's history of fiber agriculture. And so for this particular this artwork, there were 49 proposals submitted for the call, and her work stood out from the start. The piece, again, was in every score's top 3 recommendations for both the technical and the artistic panel. And after her formal presentation and interview, her artwork was chosen as the #1 recommendation by consensus for the selection panel. The panelists were really impressed by how different this piece was from anything else that we had seen. And also impressed by her body of work, so the examples that she showed us, and by how well the piece represents Waco beyond simply illustrating a Colombian mammoth. It incorporates other elements of Waco's story.
Amanda?
Yes.
Do we know, because with Mr. Stanton's piece, the glass allows particular color to come in and be involved. Do we know if there will be any elements of color in this one?
Well, this one.
I know I saw some in the
Yes.
the pieces before, but I wasn't sure.
Thank you for that question. There are a few options that can be addressed by the background of the wall.
Yes.
And also the fiber that is chosen. I don't know if I can go backwards, but there was.
Well, don't worry about
no.
it if you can't.
There was, oh, look at that. Okay, there were different fibers that could be incorporated to make sort of a two-tone. She showed the body and the tusks of different
Yeah.
colors. So there are a few options there to incorporate some color, but that will be decided later once we look at this whole color
scope
scheme
of
for the
the-
room
yes.
and for the entire airport design.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. So, moving forward, this was our project timeline. So, airport construction's beginning on the 1st. The resolution will be presented to City Council for approval for these two artworks at the August 2nd meeting. Then we will be working through the month of August to finalize artist contracts. And then the artwork will be created from September of 2022 through July of 2023. And then the early fall artwork will be installed as the airport construction is completed in December of 2023. So that is it. Any other questions?
Questions for the team here?
That's awesome.
Or does anybody want to look more closely at any of our visual aids?
I think it's cool. I'm super proud and of these efforts. We've said it many times as you travel from place to place and you notice, folks, airports. It is truly your first impression of a city and what's happening in it. And I'm so excited to see us truly be looking at reflecting who we are and what we do, in welcoming our visitors and guests and those who are traveling, who are flying Waco from home. Give them an opportunity to see the richness of our culture and experience it in the very first way from the moment they get off that jet bridge. And so I'm super excited about the renovation and work. I keep telling you, I need to see these pictures in the jetway. I was looking yesterday. I was like, somebody show me that Waco is under construction. Waco's airport's under construction. Because I think it makes a difference. We pardon our dust is cute, but I want to see it from the jet bridge. Because I need folks to know we are about to do some crazy, amazing things.
We do have those graphics coming for that application, so we're working on that.
Yay.
Thank you guys so much. We're just really thankful for the partnership in Creative Waco. You do so many great things for our community, but this is such a great manifestation of our partnership. I'm really excited about these projects. I think they're unique and beautiful, and I also think that I really appreciate the connection to Waco's culture and history, even prehistoric history. So thank you guys so much for your work that you do, and Joel, we thank you so much too.
Absolutely. And just quickly, Mayor, these are coming as a recommendation essentially from the board and staff for us to approve in August. Is that correct? Is
That's
that
my
like
understanding.
That's
process-wise?
correct, Councilmember. We wanted to give you all a preview at this meeting so you would have seen it and gotten to interact with it.
Great, yeah.
Maybe, I don't know if you can leave those, and maybe on a break, we can.
We actually have some paint and brushes in the back too, if you want to paint the birds.
Go for it.
I'm kidding. I digress. No, I think that it would be good so that when we're on break, y'all could touch and feel them and get a sense of
I'll
scale.
make sure they make their way back there.
Thanks, guys.
That's a good one.
It does. All right, our next work session, Mayor and Council, is work session 447. This is a follow-up from a work session we had just recently, actually. We're just talking about our Reimagine Waco Transit and where we're headed in the future with transit. And Council had some really good questions, and the team, Serena Stevenson from Waco Transit, and also our consulting team here today is going to walk us through a few slides that are meant to build upon those questions that we had last time. And so at this point, I'll turn it over to Serena. Thanks for being here.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Today, we're here to provide an update on our route realignment study and to show you the comparison between our current fixed route and our current fixed route, as well as scenario 2, so that you can see a comparison between the two. We're not going to take up much time, so I'm going to turn it over to Renee as well as Ed from Alliance Transportation Group, and we're going to move forward with the presentation.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon. As Serena said, we're here today to talk about existing service, scenario 2, and the comparison between the two. We appreciate the questions we got at our last briefing. We hope we're going to answer today the questions you have, but we're both here in case you have any additional. Again, this is a team effort. We appreciate the input of our partners to help us get some of the answers today, as well as the ongoing support from Waco Transit and the MPO. Just a reminder for those who may be seeing this for the first time, this is the first time in over 20 years we're rethinking how Waco Transit is delivered across the community as a means to improve connectivity, minimize travel time, and provide more freedom through transit to folks in the community. One of the things that's important to remember is although this process is coming up on an end, it's part of an ongoing continuum of activity that goes back to 2013, where we're looking at Waco Transit as an opportunity to improve access not only through the connections to BRT, but also as part of just general redesign to support overall economic development in the community. Now, there were questions last time about our existing service, and what we did is we provided some printed maps because I believe Councilwoman Rodriguez had some questions about the difference between the screen and the monitor, so we went ahead and gave those to you. Let me just tell you, Councilwoman Rodriguez, I too have problems with the colors, so I appreciate your ask because that was something that I wanted to put on the schedule. But basically, just to remind everybody, we have 10 fixed routes which currently run across Waco, plus additional service that services Baylor, as well as the demand response service that handles paratransit needs. Again, as we discussed, most routes run in one direction, basically from in town all the way to the outer edge, then back again. This service is basically offered on weekdays on a predictable schedule, Saturdays on a varied schedule, and then the time between buses generally varies from 60 to 120 minutes. We went ahead and provided you the details on the current published schedule. And again, just a reminder to think about this in terms of where we're offering service, where it is located, what day of the week, how many hours of the day, and then frequency. Basically, again, if someone were to step up to a stop, how long would they have to wait until the next bus comes by? Generally, most routes have a 60-minute frequency. Just a reminder that Route 7 is a unique route in that buses run in opposite directions. So if you're standing out there on the route, you may see a bus passing in the opposite direction within an hour. One of the things we were asked about was ridership in general, which again, remember, we are in a post-COVID society, so we are actually in the process of recovering ridership. However, routes 1, 2, and 4 have the highest weekday ridership, and I think when we talked to you last time, ridership on the weekday was averaging about 99 riders per day across the system. We looked at that generally across the day and found it was steady throughout the day, basically between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m., which generally is a predictor that people use it all day long. There are some spikes near the end of the day, particularly out near the McClellan Community College, which indicates folks are going out there at the end of the day or possibly are getting on at the end of their class or near end of class to come back into town. So again, what we tried to do was do what the handouts did. That's a lot of dids and do's. So what you see up here right now is the existing route network, and the simulation should have included the future. So we'll come back to that in just a moment. Again, just a reminder that over time, ridership has decreased and continues now to, because of COVID, activity actually dropped off, but we are now recovering due to COVID. Oh, thank you. I was just reminded the mouse would have shown us the differential, so we're going to go back to that for just a second. Nope, it does not. Love technology when it works. Love it better when it doesn't work, because that means we have to talk a little more. So again, just a reminder that when we looked at transit routes across the community, it's a blend of data sets, not only who is riding transit and where they're going, basically their key destinations, but also who in the community needs it the most. We also looked at those who are most vulnerable to disconnect from the community without lack of transportation, as well as those areas where maybe buses, sidewalks, bicycles, and other means come together to form a network. And then finally, we looked at where service goes, where it doesn't go, how many days a week it is offered. Again, just to kind of figure out what's the lay of the land. We did this through the means of a composite score, which generally shows you how the Waco area is currently receiving transit. Those darker areas, darker green, are areas that have a very high composite score. Basically, they receive a lot of transit. Areas that are a little lighter or closer to the red spectrum, maybe not as much. Doesn't mean that there isn't need in those areas. What it means is that the current network concentrates their assets primarily around downtown and around the downtown hub. So when we looked at the scenario development, remember we had 3 alternatives that were compared against each other, 2 that actually looked at variations of the BRT alignment, and then the third, which was a blank slate. At our last meeting, the council asked for more information on scenario 2, which is a blank slate, which basically blows the lid off of everything we have, but still allows BRT to be reintroduced in the future. Because again, BRT would overlay whatever alternative we're talking about today. So in looking at this blank slate, we actually are providing a combination of service. We are actually looking at realigning the fixed routes or the buses that run on regular schedule to those areas of town where people need it most. We are also offering microtransit in areas where there is just as much need, but the network of roads, streets, sidewalks, and other things are not sufficient to run buses, which actually in a net way provides more connection to these parts of town. But we also looked at ways to improve frequency and connectivity to main generators and activities of employment across the region. We're doing that by allowing microtransit, for example, to interface with existing routes, by having schedules where the system overlaps, having areas where the routes are a little more spread out, where folks can actually get to more access points by riding shorter distances and shorter periods during the day. But we do have some areas which still have the 1 hour frequency. Again, that's not an indication of lack of need or lack of desire. It just means that they're perfectly served with that existing service. Because again, we're looking at other alternatives, such as the more high frequency routes running north and south through downtown. And of course, we can't underscore the benefit of microtransit to providing more frequent, more reliable, more available service door to door. With that, I'm going to let Renee take it from here and talk a little bit about the benefits of microtransit and then also the costs.
Thank you, Ed. So one key aspect of scenario 2 is the introduction of microtransit, which is an innovative form of transit being looked at and implemented in cities big and small across the country. So if you're not familiar with microtransit, this is a form of on-demand service similar to an Uber or Lyft, but provided at the public transit level. So what this does is it provides flexibility to riders so that they're capable of connecting to their destinations from door to door throughout the zone. But this also provides flexibility to the system itself. So this is extremely cost-saving to the system because there's no need to invest in fixed route infrastructure in low-density areas that may not be ready for fixed route service. It also gives the system the ability to move service based on emerging needs, trends, and demand as it comes up. Another key aspect of microtransit is that it can serve as the first and last mile solution for destinations, again, not well served by fixed route transit. So a big piece in studies of transit systems around the country is making that last mile connection to your final destination once getting off the service. So microtransit is a really great way to implement that and introduce that to the riders in the system. And then again, this is provided at the same cost as the current fixed route system. So you're getting that door-to-door service at no additional cost to the rider.
Quick question. So when we talk about microtransit, what kind of vehicles are we talking about typically? Are we talking like a van? Are we talking a short bus? Are we talking a...
This would be more like a van.
Okay.
It can be implemented at really any different level, but small enough that it's not a short bus full of 15 to 20 people.
Okay, and then similarly, with microtransit in other communities, are these vehicles set up so that way there's easy access for folks that are using a wheelchair or have any sort of mobility devices?
Yes, absolutely, and that would be required from any federal grant used to implement that service.
Question. On the microtransit, how do you apply to be a part of a rider on the microtransit part of our bus service?
So that would be, the city would have to engage with either a software company or provide its own service to use an app or other forms of communication with the system. You could probably even call to schedule a service, to provide a variety of options for riders to access that system.
Oh, so there's not a special form
No,
or, you,
Is it like the
No,
rural?
ma'am, there's not
the
an
rural
eligibility
route now?
process. It would be open to the general public. You would download an app, or either you'd be able to call into the facility under Title VI. You have to opt for both options, and then they could call, schedule the trip. It would go into that zone, pick the individual up, and drop them off at their destination, and they'd be able to track that vehicle on the app.
so I could call tomorrow and just say, I need a ride to certain part of town. Can you take me?
If it's
And
in that
they would let-
microtransit zone.
Yeah,
Yes,
if it's
ma'am.
in the zone, yeah. But I would be eligible to do that.
Yes, ma'am, no eligibility requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a similar question on this. Have y'all seen in other communities an ability to have a wide reach of user and riders in microtransit? And said differently is, I feel like public transportation has the traditional bus service in people's minds. Have you been able to reach a diverse cross-section of different communities by utilizing microtransit?
Yes. So one thing we're seeing in transit research is that microtransit has really started to introduce new riders that normally wouldn't take transit, just like you're saying.
Okay.
So absolutely.
Well, and my hope is that we'd be able to engage that some of the users that not only don't normally use public transportation, but I don't want just like tech savvy people who you don't get the word gets out. I want people that are in financially insecure neighborhoods and people that wouldn't normally be thinking about resources that might be available to them, coming to know that this resource is available to them. So that's helpful to hear that y'all have seen that success in other communities.
Mm-hmm. Would this be somewhat, I think Councilmember Barefield was about to ask this, would this be similar or modeled on what we do with our rural transit here in McLennan County?
Same software. We have an EcoLane software would allow us that option, and we do have an app currently with EcoLane software that we could set up zones and move forward with it. So it'd be just like a demand-based. You call, schedule it, and then, they would take you from your origin to your destination.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So the next two slides that I have to present to you you have two maps in front of you that show the ability to access a variety of key destinations within the service area, both under the existing network and Scenario 2. So what you see on the right is, like I said, the variety of destinations, urgent care facilities, pharmacies, schools, supermarkets, and then the ability to access those areas in 15-minute intervals up to 60 minutes. And what we're seeing is on East Waco, in this microtransit zone, as well as part of the system, there's a drastic increase in the ability to reach these key destinations across the system between 30 and 60 minutes. And then again, on the other side of town, with the addition of the other microtransit service area, we're seeing a much more drastic increase, sometimes up to 600% for citizens and riders to reach jobs, pharmacies, et cetera, through this integration of the new system. So again, you have this in your packet. This is just a side-by-side to show you the existing versus the Scenario 2. Scenario 2 is a more consolidated, concise system, consolidating some routes, rerouting some, and of course the introduction of the microtransit zones. Looking side by side, the coverage area of existing to Scenario 2 is from 65 to 43 square miles. That's based upon a walkshed of 1/4 mile, which is typically the distance that a citizen would walk to reach service. I do want to point out that that 65 square miles, that does include the Marlin Sanderson Farms commuter stop system, which is not included in Scenario 2 because it's not a fixed route line. It's actually funded from a different service. So in general, both systems actually have the same square miles coverage area. The number of routes would be increased by 2. The number of buses would increase from 10 to 16 that is available with the current fleet. And then, of course, the microtransit zones would increase from 0 to 2. Some other performance metrics that we looked at in this study are basic metrics that transit system used to identify benefits to the riders. So that's going to be less time between buses. So riders waiting for buses would have less time to wait, better ability to plan trips and more time to reach their destinations for work, play, et cetera. Additionally, like I showed previously, there's going to be less riding time between key destinations. So as Ed mentioned earlier, looking at the transit market score analysis, the routes proposed in scenario 2 use the key destinations throughout the Waco area to make sure that riders throughout the system can reach those in the most efficient way possible. Tied into that, more routes have more direct service, again, to those key destinations. And then finally, door-to-door neighborhood service would be available in those microtransit zones, as well as the ability to introduce new microtransit zones throughout the Waco system as demand increases for the service. So the next 2 slides, this is just a table showing you the existing routes on the left side, scenario 2, and which routes kind of correspond to those routes in the system, as well as those icons showing the general update and change to the routes. And again, what we're seeing is that across the board, scenario 2 is scoring higher on these metrics, given key destinations, timetables, et cetera, for the riders in the Waco system. Another key indicator that we looked at was projected ridership, and this is using the Federal Transit Administration STOPS model, which is developed by the Federal Transit Administration to analyze and compare projects for grant proposals. So what it does is it looks at total system-wide ridership for the existing service as well as ridership for transit dependents. That's going to be those, like previously mentioned, those citizens or riders that have no other form of transportation and really need to depend on that transit system. So under a no-build scenario by 2040, just keeping the existing system as it is, the model suggests that there would be a 12% increase in ridership, just a slow increase over the number of years. However, with scenario 2, we're looking at a system-wide ridership increase of 31% and up to 55% for those transit dependents who require service. And again, these are the fixed route system for scenario 2 in addition to the microtransit zones that were analyzed. So let's talk about costs. So operation costs in front of you are broken down by local share and federal. For the local share of the city's contribution to the system, the increase from existing to scenario 2, which again includes that fixed route and microtransit, would be around $300,000 to $400,000 a year for the local contribution. The other 85% would be $1.2-ish million, which would be sought after through federal grants and other dedicated operation funds from the federal government. In terms of capital costs, as I mentioned, the city does have the existing fleet to support service under scenario 2. So the capital costs and that local share, the 20%, would really just go into microtransit vehicle purchase, which would leave the city on the hook for $50,000 with the federal government taking over the remaining $200,000.
So can you go back to that one?
Yes.
So that's, okay, I'm just seeing it's called here. That's annual or what I'm trying to figure out.
Yes, these are annual operations costs from the existing
so
to
6.7 to 7.1 million, right?
Yes.
Delta.
No, that's the total.
Yeah, it's 300.
Okay, so the delta is 2.4 to.
Correct,
to
for the
2.8.
total operations cost, including both local share and federal share.
Okay, thanks.
Another aspect of the study was looking into electrification of the fleet, which would be introducing electric buses into the current traditional operated fleet. So what you have in front of you is a couple of unit costs for charging setup equipment and the purchase of 2 battery electric buses for a total cost of $2.9 million with a local share of $500,000, just south of $600,000 for that startup cost. In order to determine the time frame to actually, change the entire fleet to electric, we would have to do a complete analysis of the transit asset management plan just to determine the life expectancy of current vehicles to make sure that they're getting their useful life before transitioning to the electric fleet. So in a nutshell, existing versus scenario 2, some of the benefits of scenario 2 is improved efficiency for Waco Transit with route interlining. Again, that's just no more one-way routes. Consolidating routes into one streamlined service for riders. This scenario positions Waco to implement bus rapid transit in the future following implementation. This also introduces new and innovative technology in the form of microtransit to better meet public needs with emerging trends. We are looking at minimum 1-hour routes with 30-minute frequency on 2 routes in the system, with the ability to increase over time. And then finally, just allows more users to access transit due to the frequency increase and variety of options available to citizens. In terms of next steps, following council consideration, the team would finalize the Reimagine Waco Transit report this summer, which would include a detailed implementation plan and strategy to roll out this scenario. And then I just want to mention that, of course, each step following that would include council and public review at every step of the way, including seeking grant funding and local share for implementation, the capital purchasing for microtransit vehicles, full implementation of the scenario, and then, of course, seeking capital funds for the bus rapid transit in the future. And that will conclude our presentation.
Any questions or comments?
I'll start. I appreciate staff's work on this. Serena, I know that you've put a lot of work into this whole concept. Now, we started out 4 or 5 years ago talking about this kind of this spine system and going down Franklin and creating these loops off of it. But at some point, I like the idea that we're kind of resetting here a little bit. We took a look at the costs of what that would be, the route networks, the ridership, kind of some of the direction it was taken, and instead of trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, we're doing a reset, and I kind of like the direction that this is going. Particularly taking into account, technology, this microtransit availability, how the city is evolving, how the user needs are evolving, and still allowing, if we decided in the future to have some kind of a BRT overlay, that we could still do that. So I think this scenario too, and I appreciate the extra work that you've done to kind of clarify what we're talking about. I think we're seeing some efficiencies with these routes, sort of minimizing the complexity of it a bit, and maybe creating some predictability on where these routes are going to go and how you get from one side of town to the other. And the delta, I guess I'm going to make sure I'm reading this right again. If you go back to that page, we're talking about the delta of existing to scenario 2 operationally is only about 300,000 to the city. Which I think that was one of the big, when we started talking about the BRT initially, I think that number was almost 5 million a year. And then I think, Andre, the capital costs were like 25 or 30 million. Some of that was coming from federal, but a lot of it was still going to be local in nature. So this seems to me a good place to land, and as far as, again, making it a little more efficient optically and practically too, I'm sure, and allowing us to maybe catch up with technology and how the city is evolving. So this, to me, is going in the right direction. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yep, I agree. I also like scenario 2. I like that it's kind of more narrowly tailored to where our riders are and where demand is lower, adding that microtransit. Echoing Councilmember Holmes' comments, I think this is the right direction, so thank you both.
I think the opportunity that I really see in us going with the second scenario is in how we market this. I think some of the questions that council members have raised of who are we trying to educate about this service, from our young tech-savvy teens that maybe don't have a car, to our elders, to folks with disabilities. So I will want to push us to be sure that we have a bilingual plan and a comms and campaign strategy that's really engaging, so that way folks know that this is what we're doing for city dollars.
I want to echo everything all 3 of my council members, and I'm sure whatever Andrea says too, I'll agree with. Thank you for this report. It really lets us as council members know what, we get questions all the time when we're at neighborhood meetings or just even shopping around. People ask us about the bus route. So I can't remember everything, but I will tell them where they can go see where the routes are. So thank you for that. And we were under the understanding that to get a microtransit, you had to go and make an application at the transit system office. So I'm glad you clarified that for me. So thank you.
No need for me to drag on the fact that we approve of scenario 2. I appreciate the perspective. Oftentimes I'll say yes, but, yes, and. This is one of those yes, if conversations where if we look at different ways to do things, if we take an assessment of what we have and see, is that really working for our customers and our clients, then we can get to a better opportunity for them, and that's exactly what is happening right now. So I appreciate the second deeper dive into this and look forward to going on that in a new way that doesn't limit us from any of the things that we have looked at and talked about in the years past. So I'm very pleased.
I agree. I think that, like Councilmember Palmer said, really want to have a robust communication strategy to really widen or increase our ridership using the microtransit. And then also, one thing that we might consider doing is looking at some of these, if there are people that are going to be regular riders that are going to be impacted by the route changes, the ones that are specifically on some of these routes that are going to be removed or pretty significantly altered, I think those will be some that we can really target. Hopefully we know our bus drivers and our team know who these regular riders are. So I really want to make sure that they're aware of how we can, that there will be this microtransit opportunity made available to them. And also as we go forward too, as we continue to see industry grow and we continue to see business come to our community that have good livable wage jobs, one of the key access to financial security is, I think, ensuring we have good transit. And so just encouraging you, as you have been doing, to be mindful of this being one of the puzzle pieces to financial security and being nimble as we need to change as we go forward. So really excited for the work that has been done and look forward to seeing some of these ideas implemented as we go forward. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mayor and Council, we've got about 35 minutes prior to the reception for Judge Taylor. And so I'm going to invite Beatrice Wharton, our planning manager from Development Services, up to run through a work session of the planning public hearing items, and we'll just see how far we get with the 14 of them. So Beatrice, take it away.
It's a good reminder.
Mayor and Council, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to present to y'all. I got a picture from Clint that he had some shark fishing yesterday, so it sounds like he's having a great time. Just wanted to share that little tidbit. But in all honesty, thank you so much for your time. I'll try to go through these public hearings as quickly and efficiently as possible, but feel free to stop me if you have any questions. So the first public hearing that I'll go through is the subdivision plat for the amended preliminary plat of the Lake Ridge Estates Edition. This is located at the northwest corner of Spring Valley Road and Chapel Road within the ETJ. The original preliminary plat was approved for 10 lots along Chapel Road, with the remaining 108 lots as Lot 8, which is the yellow area that you see on your screen here. So the amendment is to subdivide the former Lot 11 into 66 lots with a density of 0.6 units per acre. There will be 30 feet of right-of-way dedicated along Chapel Road as part of this. Comments and concerns related to floodplain have been addressed. We did not have any speakers at the Plan Commission hearing, and this was approved 9-0. Next, we have a public hearing on a request from Mary Wise and John Calloway on behalf of Mission Waco Mission World, Inc. For the renewal of a special permit for a transitional shelter 2 in an O3 district. So just a reminder of what defines a transitional shelter 2. It is a facility providing temporary shelter for persons who are receiving therapy and or counseling from support staff who are present at all times if residents are present for one or more of the following purposes. 1, to help residents recuperate from the effects of drugs or alcohol addiction. 2, to help homeless persons or families achieve independence and obtain permanent housing. Or 3, to provide temporary shelter for persons who are victims of domestic abuse. This particular request comes to you for 2322 and 2324 Gorman Avenue within the Sanger Heights neighborhood and the Conservation District overlay. This is in Council District 4. The original special permit was approved by council in July of 2021, and here is the site layout for the facility. And this is for the current Manna House, as it's known, for a residential recovery program for men with substance abuse issues. There are 11 beds in the facility, and Manna House's current programming has been in place since 2000. Their previous location did limit their facility to only 6 people. We have not had any issues with the special permit since its approval. The length of the program is 4 to 6 months, depending on individual needs and issues, and each phase has certain benchmarks, privileges, and responsibilities for participants that they have to go through. Staff recommends a 3-year time limit for this renewal of the special permit. The initial request was limited to 1 year, and this is consistent with our recommendation for other transitional shelter special permits, as we've seen in the past. If there aren't any issues within the first year, we typically do recommend a 3-year extension or a 3-year time limit. We had 29 notices and 0 returned on this request. The applicant did speak at the meeting and no one spoke in opposition, and it was approved 8-0. Next, we have a public hearing on a request from Hannah Murray and Susan Peters on behalf of Unbound Waco for a special permit for Transitional Shelter 1 in an R1B district at 21084 Avenue. And again, this is a very similar definition. Basically, the difference between a Type 2 and a Type 1 for a transitional shelter is that a Type 1 does limit it to no more than 6 residents and 2 supervisory personnel. This particular request is also within the Sanger Heights neighborhood and Conservation District overlay and Council District 4 for what is known as the Reagan, which is a proposed temporary shelter for up to 6 girls, 12 to 16 years of age, who have been victims of trafficking. There is an existing residence on the property that has recently been permitted for renovation and expansion to add a bedroom at the rear of the property and an office. And the average time of stay for girls who would partake in this program would be 90 days with the ability to stay up to 1 year as needed. Unbound, which was launched in 2012 and proposes to use community partnerships to provide for needs of the youth at this facility, which include Waco Family Medicine, Methodist Children's Home Charter School, Reach Ranch, and the YMCA.
I couldn't tell by the pictures, but will there be a fence around this facility?
They are proposing, I believe, a fence at the rear of the property.
Rear?
Yes, ma'am. At least from what we can see in the plans. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Sure.
I wonder if for future agenda items like this, or anything where there is a incredibly vulnerable population, if we could remove the direct address so that's not available for public consumption and just have the council district or even the neighborhood. But I feel a heightened security risk knowing there are minors in this home and this address is now public record.
So, Councilmember, unfortunately, because it's a zoning request, we'll certainly look into it, but because it's a zoning request, you know, the address has to do with noticing and all that kind of stuff, so it may not be possible to do that.
Okay. If there's, let's just look into ways that we could be thoughtful, even if.
That's why I asked about a fence.
Yeah, navigating.
Just trying to.
Yeah, we can talk. Yeah, let's just thank you, Jennifer.
Staff does recommend approval of the special permit with a 1-year time limit for this initial request, with a condition of a maximum of 6 residents and 2 supervisory personnel. We did mail out 31 notices and had 1 returned in favor. The applicant spoke at the meeting. 1 person spoke in favor, none in opposition, and it was approved 8-0. And as our city manager mentioned earlier, since the Plan Commission meeting, we have received a request from the applicant to delay the hearing for this item until August 2nd. Next, we have a public hearing on a request from Jonathan McNamara on behalf of BW New Road Waco LLC for a special permit for an automobile car washing establishment in a C2 district at 2301 South New Road, which is northeast of Creekview Drive within the Kendrick neighborhood and Council District 3. This is a mixed-use, high-traffic area with commercial, office, and medium-density residential uses in the vicinity, just north of the location of Topgolf, Cinemark, and the main event. Future nearby uses that are proposed include over 650 multifamily units. And this particular request is for a proposed Blue Wave Express car wash that would be a building that's about 125 feet long by 36 feet wide with 21 canopied vacuum stalls, as you can see here. And that does offer the opportunity for customers, once they go through the tunnel to have their vehicles washed, they can pull into this area if they want to take advantage of the free vacuums that are there. The applicant has stated in their narrative that they recycle 80% of all water captured in this facility, and they offer 4 different wash packages and monthly car wash memberships. The typical hours of operation are 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and they have an average of 3 employees on site for 2 to 3 shifts per day. They do have stacking for pay stations that have a capacity of about 24 vehicles with an additional 79 vehicles of space available between the wash queue and the tunnel entrance, which is this area here. And this is comparable to other car wash locations that have been built around town, if not more, queuing availability on site. And they have stated that they can provide a wash for over 100 vehicles per hour. And these are some renderings that were provided by the applicant of the facility and some photos of the site.
So this is on the same side as Topgolf, because I was like, isn't there one that just opened across from the VA?
Yeah, there's one on across from the WISD. Yeah, I think so.
That's correct, along Bagby.
Right.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's, okay, all right.
Councilmember Barefoot, this is the new car wash district.
Got you. Got you, sir. Thank you for the clarity.
Plan Commission did recommend approval of the request, and I did want to highlight some special provisions and conditions that were recommended by staff, which include limited hours of operation from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. All site lighting must be directed toward the establishment and not at adjacent properties, and an all-season landscape screen 4 feet and with densely planted with a combination of deciduous and evergreen trees and shrubs, which have an initial height of 3 feet and will attain a height of 6 feet within 36 months after installation shall be installed. And that would be installed along the southern property line that is adjacent to the lot to the south, which is proposed for multifamily. And this verbiage is consistent with recommendations for screening of other commercial uses of this type that we've recommended. We did mail out 10 notices and had 0 return on this request. 3 applicant representatives spoke at the meeting. No one spoke in opposition, and it was approved 6-3 by Plan Commission. Next is a public hearing on a request from Walker Partners on behalf of LG Callan LLC for the approval of a final PUD plan for Callan Village, which is known as Phase 3 for this PUD. This is at Panther Way between Ritchie Road and Farm Miller Road, and I'll highlight the different phases, but this particular request is for these boundaries here. The blue area is the entire Callan Village PUD. And this is within the West Waco neighborhood and Council District 3. And then just wanted to highlight just a little bit of history for this PUD. This was the approved concept back in 2017 that came through and was reviewed by council. It is predominantly single-family residential with areas for multifamily, which is this blue tract here, commercial and office tract here, future proposed fire station here. All of this kind of yellow-orange area would be single-family lots. The green areas would be open space or detention areas or ponds. And then this area right here is an amenity center. So Phase 1 was approved in 2018, and it included 63 single-family lots here, the amenity center here, some open and green space, obviously some road system to connect to that area, 23 townhouse lots here, and then, of course, public right-of-way detention and common areas. Phase 2 was approved in 2021, and I forgot to mention, Phase 1 has already been completed. It's already been built. Phase 2 is under construction and was approved in 2021 for 56 single-family lots, also including public right-of-way detention and common areas. And the proposed Phase 3 is for this area here to include 52 single-family lots, public right-of-way detention and common areas. And I did also want to point out that what they're proposing here is larger lots that have less density than what was originally approved. I mentioned that in the concept they were approved for up to 5 units an acre. This Phase 3 is about 2.2 units per acre. And then some details on Phase 3 for what they're proposing. You can see their acreage there and all of the items that they're including. And they are recommending the same type of design elements that were approved with Phases 1 and 2, as well as the concept. And here's some photos of the area. We did mail out 43 notices, had 1 returned opposed. The applicant representative spoke at the meeting and no one spoke in opposition. And staff does recommend approval of the request, and it was approved 9-0 by Plan Commission. Next, we have a public hearing on a request from Sterling Hill on behalf of D&E Castle Holdings LLC for a special permit for a house museum in an R1B district. This is at 3300 Austin Avenue within the Austin Avenue neighborhood in Council District 3. And so this is a recent ordinance that was adopted by council. Just a reminder of how we define a house museum in our ordinance, which is a property that has to be a recorded Texas historic landmark with historic or architectural significance, which provides house tours to be conducted for compensation to the public for the purpose of offering varied experiences in education, enjoyment, reflection, and knowledge sharing. This is allowed by special permit only in R1, R2, and R3 zoning, and it is allowed by right in office and commercial zoning. The R1B property that's in question includes the Cottonland Castle, a recorded Texas historic landmark. I think everyone's familiar with this facility or has at least seen it in the past. The property was purchased by D&E Castle Holdings LLC, which is a Magnolia company, and renovations have been recently completed. The applicant proposes to operate guided home tours for compensation on site. This is their site layout on the Austin side here. This is North 33rd Street. Here you see the castle. If you haven't had a chance to go by the facility or drive by it, it is pretty magnificent to see some of the renovations that have taken place. This is the Franklin side of the property. So this portion of the property is commercially zoned and also owned by the applicant, and that is where they're proposing to have designated parking for anyone who schedules a tour of the facility. And visitors will be instructed to park there. And I did also, here's some photos of the facility. And I did want to highlight some conditions that we incorporated into our recommendation, that the operation of the facility shall be conducted in such a manner that it does not create parking problems or traffic congestion for the adjoining neighbors or for the immediate neighborhood. Parking shall be limited to the off-street parking lot on the Franklin side of the house. And here's an image of the Franklin side parking area. No on-street parking shall be allowed for house museum tour guests along Austin Avenue or North 33rd Street, and hours of operation shall be limited from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Because the applicant does propose to only operate this on a temporary basis, there's also a time limit that this permit shall be for a period of 6 months and expire on December 19, 2022. We had 22 notices mailed and 0 returned on this request, and it was approved 8-0 by Plan Commission.
Just a note for my fellow council members, that I think Magnolia and their point person on this, Sterling Hill, has done a good job working with the neighborhood association in this matter. They came and presented this plan to the Austin Avenue Neighborhood Association back in June, and it was met with enthusiasm and no public opposition. Furthermore, they presented, while they will be charging for these tours, they had an open house that was structured along the way that the tours will be given. Last week, my wife and I took advantage of that. We don't live too far from the castle, just outside 200 feet, actually. Of course, they've done a wonderful job with the place, but they had security on site. They had tour guides on every floor. The neighbors were very impressed. As you know, this is a historic home, and we're hopeful that what they've done here will continue to allow this structure and its legacy to thrive, as it is the namesake and the symbol of the neighborhood that it surrounds. So I think they've done a great job working with the neighborhood on this.
Thank you. And those are the conditions that I just highlighted. Next, we have a public hearing on a request from McCann Adams Studio on behalf of the Park LLC to rezone from R1B to PUD, and this was continued during the June 21st meeting to this meeting. We have received a request from the applicant to withdraw the application, and council will need to have a public hearing on the withdrawal request and vote to allow the request.
So for clarity, we're voting to approve with them withdrawing the request of the PUD.
Yes, ma'am, that's what has come before you.
And what happened if we didn't?
So if council decides to not approve the withdrawal, then council would consider the zoning request and could vote on the zoning request.
Thank you.
Next, we have a public hearing on a request from Wazir Dinani for a land use change from suburban residential to mixed-use flex and to rezone property from R1B to C1. This is approximately 1.6 acres of land out of 4200 South University Parks Drive, which is located between South 3rd Street and Loop 340 within the Oakwood neighborhood, Zone 3 of the University Overlay in Council District 1. This area was annexed into the city in 1998 as R1B single-family residential. This is an existing vacant, there is an existing vacant building that was formerly known as D&J Food Mart. The applicant is working through some code compliance issues and desires to operate the building for commercial use, and that's why he's requested this rezoning. There was a rezoning request for C2 that was disapproved by council in April, and the difference between C2 and C1 is essentially that C1 does not allow alcohol sales, and that is established by the zoning. There is a daycare adjacent to the property, which does have some limitations based on our city ordinance requirements for alcohol sales, but the proposed C1 would actually place a more restrictive limitation and not allow alcohol sales regardless of whether the daycare facility is there or not.
Is the daycare facility the school for the blind?
I'm not completely sure, I'm sorry.
I know the school for the blind is there, but I didn't know there was a daycare center there as well, unless it's the same facility.
I don't know the answer to that, I'm sorry.
Okay. It doesn't matter, thank you. I was just,
Sure.
didn't know there was a daycare over there.
We did mail out 15 notices on this request, had 3 returned, 1 in favor and 2 opposed. The applicant did speak at the meeting, no one spoke in opposition, and it was approved 9-0 by Plan Commission for both the land use and zone change.
Can I ask a question? Could you go back to the picture of where he wants to rezone?
Yes, ma'am. So it's this front area.
No, the other one, the one before that, where it shows where he's,
Oh, the survey, sorry.
2 more.
yeah,
Or 1
another
more,
one.
rather. The one that has the zoning of the property.
Right, that one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this one, 3rd Street is down here, so he's only wanting to rezone half of his property?
About
Or
half.
is that restriction that the mayor put in there the last time, is that in effect or not? Where he said he could not go into commercial into Third Street. Isn't that what you asked for,
Well,
Mayor?
I
What
think I was
it?
just trying to get, I don't actually remember specifically, but my recollection was just trying to figure out which part was going to be commercial and if the back part would say residential.
Yeah.
Right, it would. So this is the exact same boundary that was proposed initially for C2 zoning. And now the request is for C1, but this would remain, this property, this is the remaining portion of property that would remain as R1B.
Okay, let me ask this too. There were some mobile homes there at one point in time. Will that ever be grandfathered? Like, could he say, okay, I've got a mobile home here, can I grandfather that area and continue to put mobile homes there? I know within the city limits of Waco, we're not allowed that, but I'm wondering about the grandfather clause.
Sure, that's a good question. So when this property was annexed, there were mobile homes on the property. It's my understanding that there are about 6 or 7 taps for mobile homes there, but there is currently only one active mobile home. And so the one that is currently active and has continued to be active would be considered a legally non-conforming use, meaning that it could continue to operate as it is, as long as it does not stop operating for 2 years or more. It's my understanding that the other ones have been removed, and therefore they would not be considered legally non-conforming. So
Okay,
it's just
so
that one.
He couldn't add any more to
No.
that area?
No, ma'am, no more mobile homes.
And did this come in when it was annexed into the city? It was annexed in R1B. Was there a functioning convenience store at that time when it was it like non-conforming from the onset?
It's my understanding that, yes, it was in operation and it was considered legally non-conforming. And it may go back to when we did involuntary annexations, and R1B was kind of our default zoning for property that was annexed into the city.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So he's not going to be interfering with, I see the mobile home here behind the building. He would not be going back into the South Third Street residential area. There's homes back on Third Street, one on this side of him and one on this side, and then his lot right in the middle.
Right. So if he has any access off of Third Street, he could continue to use that access for residential purposes if that's all he's proposing to do. If he desired to use that for commercial access, that would be subject to meeting all city ordinance requirements for improvements. We don't anticipate that being the case, but.
But he'd have to come back.
So if he wanted to use the rear portion of the property for any commercial use, then yes, he would have to come back and either rezone, or if it's allowed by special permit, then apply for a special permit.
But right now, it's zoned residential?
Yes,
The back
ma'am.
on Third Street? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Next, we have a public hearing on a request from Patrick Fair on behalf of Fair Family LP to rezone from R1B to R3C property at 1600 Gurley Lane. This is at the southeast corner of Gurley Lane and South 16th Street within the Alta Vista neighborhood in Council District 2. The potential buyer for the property is Waco Housing Authority, and nearby uses include Great Zion Missionary Baptist Church, South 18th Street Community Center, South Waco Library, Costa Esmeralda Apartment Complex, and single-family dwellings. South Terrace, which is also a Waco Housing Authority property, is located further up Gurley Lane as well. And here's the vacant property.
So what does he want to do with this? I mean, change it to
R3C, which is multifamily residential, and it allows up to 25 units an acre. The current R1B obviously limits it to 7 units an acre.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We had 20 notices mailed for this request, 0 returned. We had no speakers at the meeting, and this was approved by Plan Commission 9-0. Next, we have a public hearing on a request from Michael Harney for the abandonment of 2 general utility easements located near Creekview Drive between South New Road and I-35. You can see those easements outlined here, and this is near one of the other public hearing items that we reviewed just earlier along South New Road. So this is the outline of the easements. This aerial's pretty outdated, but obviously lots of new commercial uses, including Topgolf and Main Event and Cinemark. And Creekview Drive has been built through here, and that's what is outlined there. The easements that were recorded by separate instrument for the development of Cottonwood Creek, sorry, I always get that name tongue twisted, Cottonwood Marketplace Development are no longer needed, as facilities have been placed within the right-of-way of Creekview Drive, which is why I highlighted that location. And here's generally an image of the property. And we are recommending approval of the abandonment with the condition that any existing facilities in the ground must be abandoned in accordance with City of Waco Engineering Department standard specifications for construction and/or standard details. We mailed out 10 notices on this request and had 0 returned. No speakers at the meeting, and this was approved 9-0 by Plan Commission. Next, we have a public hearing on a request from Walker Partners on behalf of Waco Family Medicine for the abandonment of a general utility easement at 1524 Providence Drive. This is in the Brook Oaks neighborhood and Council District 4. The Waco Family Medicine is in the process of designing a new building for the subject property. Due to the size and orientation of the existing lot, the best place for the proposed building overlaps the easement. So here's their existing building here, and they are proposing to demolish a portion of the building while continuing operations in another portion of the building, and then expanding the facilities over this area. The easement was retained by ordinance for a sewer line that is currently not being used by any existing buildings. And here you can see a few images of Waco Family Medicine. Conditions 1 and 2 were recommended by staff, and there was a condition 3 added by Plan Commission to address concerns with utility service to nearby properties, which is that all existing utility access and service for surrounding properties shall remain in the current location and condition. We mailed out 20 notices and had 0 returned, and the applicant representative spoke at the meeting. 4 people spoke with concerns, but those concerns were addressed with that additional condition, and this was approved 8-0 by Plan Commission. Next, we have a public hearing on a request from Bowman Consulting Group on behalf of Mercer McMillan LLC for a land use change from industrial to office industrial flex and to rezone from M2 to O2. This is for 23 acres located between Bagby Avenue, here's Bagby and Interstate 35, southeast of the intersection of Gateway Boulevard and Bagby Avenue. This is within the Kendrick neighborhood in Council District 3 and is part of a recent voluntary annexation of about 215 acres that was approved by Council in April 2022. The proposed zoning is consistent with the grant agreement that was approved by Council pursuant to Chapter 380 of the Texas Local Government Code for 25% of the land to be approved for multifamily. And so that would bring this up to 25%. We mailed out 28 notices and had 0 returned on this request. The applicant spoke at the meeting and no one spoke in opposition, and it was approved 9-0. Next, we have a public hearing on an ordinance amendment for Section 28-930 of the Code of Ordinances for the purpose of removing the requirements for a permit and fees associated with holding garage or yard sales. We did a peer city comparison and found that Waco is one of 3 cities out of 12 that require permit and fee for garage or yard sales. And so just in doing that comparison, just so you know, a little history, during the pandemic, we did hold off on requiring permit and fees, and through that figured out that it was creating a more cumbersome process, and we already have an ordinance in place for regulating garage or yard sales, and so anyone would be subject to meeting those requirements, but we are no longer proposing to require a permit and fee for this type of use.
Can I ask a question about that? Will that allow, I know when we started the requirement for garage licenses, it was to keep people in the neighborhood from having a garage sale all day, all week. So will this impact that, or will they be allowed to have a garage sale every day of the week?
No, ma'am. So the
week?
limitations will still apply. They will still be limited on the number of garage sales they can have per year. It's just similar now to a home occupation, which means that it's allowed by right, but still subject to meeting specific criteria. Kind of part of the reason that we adopted the ordinance for a permit and fee in the first place was to be able to monitor issues, and we found that people who are actually getting a permit and paying a fee weren't the problem. It was people who weren't going through that process. And so we still have those regulations in place, and they're still required to abide by them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Demetrius, I'm going to cut you off because we have a very important reception to get to. I think we have one more, or maybe 2 more, but one more, I think. And we'll just wing that one in the council meeting. But for the sake of honoring the judge's family and his time, I think it'd be best for us to move on. So with that, we will now recess the work session, reconvene regular session,
Good job.
and recess regular session until 6 p.m. And there will be a reception to honor Judge Taylor's retirement here in the building in the room next door.